She never imagined that a single morning could unravel her life like a thread pulled loose from an old sweater, yet that was exactly how it began for Clara Sandridge, a woman so simple and soft-spoken that most people barely remembered her in passing, until fate forced them to. The airport buzzed with its usual mechanical cruelty, long queues twisting like anxious serpents, security guards barking orders, mothers chasing toddlers through the maze of metal seats, and Clara, clutching her faded tote bag, felt her heart pound against the clock as boarding for Flight 817 flashed in angry red on the screen, reminding her that she had 22 minutes to escape the chaos of this city and make it home for the promotion ceremony of the student she tutored like a daughter. That dream shattered when she spotted him, a frail old man sitting alone at the check-in area, hands trembling, passport open upside down. No one stopped to help, the way travelers often pretend not to see suffering, the way people justify that someone else will intervene. But Clara was not built that way, so she leaned down and asked gently if he was all right, and his foggy blue eyes blinked as if waking from decades of loneliness. He whispered that he was lost, his boarding pass missing, his hearing weak, his English poorer than his memory, and that he needed to get to Chicago to see his son who, he confessed, might not wait for him this time. Clara didn't hesitate. Time was ticking, her plane was boarding, the gate was far, yet she lifted the old man's cane, hoisted his small suitcase, and guided him through a world that no longer cared for the slow. They stumbled through security where he kept forgetting to remove his shoes and empty his pockets, drawing sighs from impatient passengers who rolled their eyes as if kindness were a currency too expensive to spend. Still Clara smiled through the humiliation, trying to make the man laugh. Though secretly her pulse shivered every time the boarding announcement crackled louder, reminding her of what she was sacrificing. When they reached the gate, the agent apologized that his ticket was for another terminal entirely, and Clara realized she would need to run, really run, pushing through crowds and escalators that jerked downward while they needed to go up, the airport becoming a cruel labyrinth of terminals and gates designed without sympathy for the elderly. When they finally arrived, breathless and sweating, the man's boarding time had expired, but Clara wouldn't give up, pleading with the staff, explaining his situation, her voice trembling between prayer and desperation. The airline supervisor, shaken by the sincerity in her eyes, made a call, arranged an escort, and promised the old man a seat on a later flight at no fee, thanking Clara as though she were someone extraordinary when in truth she considered herself painfully ordinary. Clara then turned and ran back toward her own flight, sprinting with the wild hope that maybe, just maybe, miracles ran in pairs. But when she skidded to the gate, chest burning, cheeks flushed, the door had already sealed shut, and the flight attendant, thin, stern, unforgiving, shook her head without a drop of mercy. Clara didn't argue, didn't shout, didn't beg, she simply nodded as if disappointment had been an old companion long before this moment. She sank into a plastic seat, pulled out her phone, and whispered apologies to the student waiting back home, her voice cracking as she forced herself not to cry in public, because Clara believed tears were private things, meant for pillows and locked bathrooms, not airports. The old man returned with an escort a few minutes later, relieved, grateful, and unaware of the cost of her kindness until he overheard the gate agents gossiping that she had missed her flight. When he shuffled over, eyes glistening, he asked why she didn't tell him, why she sacrificed her time for a stranger whose name she still didn't know. Clara smiled softly and told him that flights could be rebooked, but some moments, especially those that saved a heart from breaking, rarely return twice. And that simple sentence lodged itself inside his soul like a spark waiting for fuel. He insisted on repaying her, offering money, then jewelry, then anything he could think of, but she refused every attempt, saying that kindness meant nothing if it demanded something in exchange. The escort helped him board his rescheduled flight, though not before he turned back for a final glance at the woman who reminded him of a world he feared had died long ago. Clara eventually paid the penalty, booked a cheaper evening ticket that stretched her modest paycheck thinner than usual, and walked outside to wait in the cold wind by the large glass windows that overlooked the runway. She watched planes lift into the sky like silver promises, unaware that one of them carried the very man whose life she had quietly repaired, unaware that he was no ordinary old traveler, unaware that he was the CEO and founder of the same airline whose flight she had just missed, Unaware that destiny had taken note of her modest bravery and was now rearranging the universe piece by piece, and as the engines roared and the scene faded, a narrator in a different world might have whispered to the viewers that real stories like this still exist, that kindness still matters, and that if they believe in such miracles, they should stay with the story. The next morning brought no fanfare for Clara, only gray skies and the sour taste of instant coffee as she sat outside her small apartment, wondering whether kindness was worth the price it exacted from people like her. The world had taught her that the good rarely prospered, that the loud branded themselves heroes while the quiet actually saved lives, and yet she never stopped choosing the quiet path, even if it meant missing flights and stretching her salary thinner than patience. She clocked in at the community tutoring center as usual, where the children greeted her with sticky fingers and toothy grins, unaware of her invisible battles, and she spent the day pouring algebra and encouragement into minds that society had pre-labeled as hopeless, until a knock interrupted the routine. It wasn't the hesitant tap of a parent or the firm rap of a supervisor, but a confident mid-tempo knock that suggested business disguised beneath courtesy. Clara opened the door to find two men in immaculate navy suits standing in the hall, one holding a leather binder, the other an envelope sealed with a gold insignia of wings. And for a moment she feared they were debt collectors or bureaucrats sent to dismantle the center. The taller man asked if she was Miss Clara Sandridge, his voice polished like airport announcements, and when she nodded, he requested a private conversation. The director ushered them into the small office, where the men explained that they represented Air, the very airline Clara had missed her flight on, and that their chairman had instructed them to deliver a letter to her personally. Clara's confusion deepened as she broke the seal and unfolded a handwritten note from the old man, in elegantly slanted script, thanking her for helping a nameless traveler rediscover the world's last traces of humanity, and for proving that decency had not gone extinct in the age of speed and selfishness. But the letter didn't end in sentiment. It continued with an invitation to the chairman's headquarters in Chicago for a personal meeting, along with a first-class ticket attached.